So, hi everyone, I'm Flavia. I am presenting today on behalf of Anand, who is the author of the paper. Basically covers analyze information requirements from three different use cases that are applying model prediction field and looking at existing ontologies and how well and whether they can support those requirements. So one of the biggest motivation of this work is something that this community is well aware of. Buildings are responsible for a large portion of energy consumption and emissions, and as such, there have been established very ambitious targets to decarbonize them. And how to get there? There are a couple of different components that have been proposed, so renewables, electrification, batteries, and so on. But they can be quite financially expensive. So one alternative, one approach is gaps. So grid interactive energy efficient things that can help decarbonize the building using intelligent controls that basically have the buildings interacting with the grid and having being used as a resource of the grid, adjust the energy consumption as needed. Model predictive control is one of those applications that can optimize the energy consumption of the building or any other objective that the wants to actively go. They have been showing quite promising results. So as we see in slides, 40% of energy savings have been reported and 30% of peak demand reduction as well. And the way they basically works is they use things, they have the building as a whole, as a system, and they optimize it for a particular objective, having some constraints and targets for it. The main issue and the thing that we are looking at in this paper, configuration of those on the during deployment in different buildings can take quite a large amount of developers. And the major reason for that is that buildings are very one of kind, very heterogeneous. There's lots of data source, lots of systems, operation, designs, and so on. And that leads to a couple particular. So one is the lack of interoperability in terms of technical interoperability. There's lots of different communication protocols out there. Some of these solutions are these data, and they ended up having data seal, and for the solution we have point to point mapping, leading to a get arrangement that is not that. Um, and we can partially see that has been addressed by standardized communication protocols, Modbus, BACnet, and gateways test protocols. But it's still we have even though we're getting the data, we are not reading that, and we spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. Naming conventions, point naming, very specific, very informal, with implicit and concept. So in this particular case here, we have one example of point name that is referring to a zone earth temperature point. But if we don't understand the name convention, it's hard to get the meaning of it. And if we go to another building, that other builder probably have another name used. So this community here, particular, has been quite active um, in this context, proposing lots of different ontologies that can represent building data in a more Rick and Saref, SAO, SN, SSN, Ashray, this standard coming and core and so on. And they also have been proposing for automate a deconfiguration of different with Portar, CK, OpenBOS, BOS, so on. So there are a bunch of approaches out there that have basically composite self-confirmed application using those standardized conceptual structure of the building data for FDD analytics and even rule-based. But so far for MPC, have very limited about how well they can support it. The question that we are trying to on how well the existing ontology can support the requirements for the application. And the way that we approached it was basically looking at the MPC problem formulation. And at this particular paper, we only focus on points out of it. So objectives that are basically the cost function for which you're minimizing your problem. So those can be minimizing energy consumption, minimizing cost, minimizing emissions, and so on. Constraints, basically the setup, boundary, what your problem within. And the model types is basically informing the states of the building so that you can create it, support the modeling of the building. The methodology that we approached for it was basically a three-step methodology. We selected 3 different field case studies that were implementing in real buildings. They came from sets of data of case studies that were proposed studied within Annex 81 and Annex 82. The second part was basically on those 3 components that we selected from the MPC formulation, gather the information and categorize that information within those 3 components for each case study. And later, we selected 3 ontologies, so Brick, Seraph, and Chi-3, for analyzing how well do they can support the modeling of those information. Here are the 3 case studies that we looked at. So as you can see, they are deployed in different parts of the world, different types of building. Some are involving batteries, some are involved only somehow the equipment for HVAC systems, some are involving PV as well. One is looking for reducing emission, the other consumption, and the other optimizing the generation of energy. So they were quite different, and which was nice to understand a variety of information. In the approach itself, as I mentioned, we divided on those 3 different dimensions. And here is just a subset of the table. The whole table is within the paper and also in Anand's GitHub account. But what we basically did was understanding from those lists of requirements for each case study, does this ontology have a concept that can help us to model or describe them in the building? So that it was for the objectives, and then for the constraints, and for the modeling as well. And here is just one example. So if we are looking for modeling for this, in the next case study, modeling the heat pump and getting the thermal information out of it, with G3, we had the heat pump information. It can be connected with a sensor concept that can be connected with a particular property. For brick, it's a little bit more straightforward. You have the equipment itself that can be connected with a sensor already specific to that particular variable. And in this case, Seraph wasn't able to support the concept because it doesn't have a class for representing heat pump object of equipment. This is the result of our study. So basically from the 3 ontologies, Brick was the one that represented better results and was able to model most of the concepts. We could see lots of overlap between them. Also, all of the concepts that were modeled by Chi-3 and Seraph, they are also able to be modeled by Brick. And the other point was that none of the 3 ontologies could well capture concepts needed for representing distributed energy resource. So information about batteries, EVs, and PV systems, and also for grid signals, emissions, and price as well. One particular thing that is important to note is although BRIC in this case was successful and represented a better sufficiency in the assessment was reflected the analysis from these 3 case studies and also reflected the analysis from the 3 dimensions that we selected. If we were to model we use another particular MPC control, another building perhaps, or another dimension, the answer might be different. And as what our paper led was basically some open questions on how can we continue this study and how can we apply it. The first open question that it led us is, okay, apart from the objectives, constraints, and models, what are the other points that from MPC that a semantic ontology, a semantic model can help with? And the other point is, apart from getting the information for the deployment of those MPC controls in a building, can and how semantic ontologies could help in the development of the models itself when creating the model for representing the building. And as a next step, so for the building 59 in the Berkeley lab, what we are doing at the moment, they are still running the MPC control there. They have a brick model of the building, and now we are creating a 2-3 model of the building, and we are going to test how well does those different models behave when configuring the application using them in this building. And that's it for, yeah, I'm happy to answer questions about it.
Right. Any questions before we break for tea? If not, I have a question about the representation of the distributed energy resources. Do you think that this is something that could also be incorporated as part of the ontologies themselves? Like how much flexibility they can offer, for example, or against what price?
Yeah, so in terms of representing the concept itself, BRIC has a class that represents EV, but it doesn't have class to represent state of charge. That is something that is needed for modeling. So, and I think that is a class that is suitable for the BRIC scope and could be added. The other type of class, like the utility signals, might not be suitable for the scope of the building-related ontology and could be applied somewhere else. There is one ontology that is OpenADR, that is basically modeling grid signals, could be a good approach for the modeling as well. SAREF has something more specific to, they have one extension that is called SAREF for energy, and now they are changing SAREF for energy flexibility, and they have a very nice concept of creating profiles for flexibility. So we can have one equipment, and it can basically have in the ontology classification of some characteristics of that equipment that could run during energy flexibility event. So potential targets or potential limit or hours that you can define your set point to and could be, use it for that.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you very much. Then it's time for, okay. I think we have one more question for you.
Very nice presentation. My question is, what do you think about to apply your ontology-based solution to the reinforcement learning-based control for the building? Here you use benefit in the model predictive control. What do you think about the reinforcement learning? Because it's also a promising control strategy in the building field.
Yeah, I think it would be the same as the model control in terms of it can help for sure the configuration of the reinforcement learning. We tested with rule-based control as well, and we could see the improvement in the deployment for the configuration of the deployment. So that would be something that, independent of the model approach, or the control approach, from rule-based to MPC to reinforcement learning, the semantics can always help on the configuration part of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's give all the speakers another round of applause. All right, then see you all after the break. I guess it's at 3:15, the next session.